Viewers, Donald Trump, the U.S. president, has just dropped a bomb. Not on a country, but on global politics. In a TV interview to a U.S. news channel, he claimed that Pakistan is still testing nuclear weapons. Yes, testing nuclear weapons in secret, viewers. This is his claim. If true, this changes India's entire security picture, as it appears to that August group on the right of your screens, viewers, who's assembling to brief the Prime Minister at the height of Operation Sindoor. You can see that. That's the entire kernel of India's security setup. Trump named Pakistan as part of a trio of nations that never stopped nuclear testing, that includes China. He said this while defending his own demand to restart U.S. nuclear tests after 33 years. So he's basically said that, look, because everyone else is doing it, including Pakistan and China, why should the U.S. not continue? He says Russia's testing and China's testing, but they don't talk about it. You know, we're an open society, we're different, we talk about it. They don't have reporters, i.e. not a free press, that are going to be writing about it. Certainly North Korea's been testing. Pakistan's been testing, unquote. Listen in, viewers.
Russia's testing and China's testing, but they don't talk about it. You know, we're a open society. We're different. We talk about it. We have to talk about it because otherwise you people are going to report. They don't have reporters that are going to be writing about it. We do. No, we're going to test because they test and others test. And certainly North Korea's been testing. Pakistan's been testing.
Pakistan's been testing. Now, viewers, obviously the United States would know, Donald Trump would know. His best friends are Sharif Jr. and of course General Munir. They've had some very private conversations in the Oval Office, so I'm sure he knows something. Now, the US already has enough nuclear power to, quote, blow up the world 150 times, unquote, as Trump loves to say. But if Pakistan has been secretly testing while India has stayed silent, then India has a problem. India hasn't tested a nuclear device since 1998. After Pokhran II, we faced sanctions, pressure, technology, bans, and we imposed our own moratorium. But we also found a way to work around these sanctions, viewers. Nonetheless, since then, our nuclear doctrine has been based on three basic pillars. Number one, maintaining a credible minimum deterrence. That means, viewers, a certain number of nuclear weapons that we think are enough to deter our enemies. We also have a no first use policy. That means that we will never, in a conflagration, in a war, use our nuclear weapons first. And we also believe in no more testing. We may not have signed the CTBT, which is the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, but viewers, we have taken a moral position and said, okay, we've done what we needed to, we've tested. We know that we can make nuclear weapons, we know how to use them, we know that it'll go off, etc., so we don't need to test. And that restraint has assumed that Pakistan followed the same rules. But Pakistan, viewers, hasn't denied Trump's claim. China rejected it. Pakistan has stayed silent. But silence is not comforting. And to that, if you were to add that China now has advanced systems like FOBs, which can evade missile defense. So if China upgrades and Pakistan quietly tests, where does that leave India? And there's a second issue. Questions still hang over how powerful India's 1998 test really was. Global seismic readings suggested a lower yield than that India officially claimed. That debate was never settled. It might have been settled from the side of the government, but the experts remain divided. So here's the real question. Can India rely on an untested deterrent when its adversaries are testing and modernizing? And if the US breaks the moratorium, India suddenly has diplomatic cover to test again and remove every doubt about its nuclear capability. For 25 years, India has behaved like the responsible nuclear power. But responsibility cannot mean vulnerability, friends. And therefore, tonight we've assembled some very intelligent people to talk about this issue. Lieutenant General Narasimhan, former member of the National Security Advisory Board, is here with us. Lieutenant General KJS Dhillon needs no introduction, former GOC 15 Corps Indian Army. Sushant Sareen, Senior Fellow of the ORF. Abhijit Mitra Iyer, Senior Fellow of the IPCS. All of these individuals have spent a whole career dissecting these issues. So let me start first with General Narasimhan. General Saab, the conversation obviously will come around to how must India now respond to these new challenges. First of all, if America were to resume nuclear testing, let's start at the real basics. What do you think would be the impact around the world?
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you for getting me on your show. This moratorium actually has been lifted by President Trump just a few hours before he met President Xi Jinping. Today, of course, he has come out with this explanation as to, he is doing it basically because other countries are doing. To substantiate his view, we don't know about Pakistan. Pakistan's, even if they are tested, I'm sure the world would have known it. That has not happened. But Russia has been actually doing certain things on the nuclear field in the recent past. They did a nuclear-powered missile testing. They also have a nuclear-powered submersible that they brought out couple of days ago. So there are movement towards the nuclear testing part, nuclear weapons coming up into play. The other thing that we need to look at is in 2021, the Federation of American Scientists located about 300 silos which have come up newly in China, that is in the Xinjiang province. So that is something that is happening on the other side. So basic thing is, since about 1980, around 1980 and a little beyond that, the development of the nuclear warheads actually has been not going forward that much. What has been going forward is the delivery systems. The effectiveness of the delivery systems, whether they can carry multiple independent re-entry vehicles, etc., etc. That is the big thing that is being tested. During Trump 1.0, we'll recall that he also withdrew from the INF treaty, saying that China and others are actually developing their nuclear arsenal, and so he needs to actually then do something about it. And thereafter, certain tests about modernizing the delivery systems, etc., the US has already done. So if you take that as a base, and from there you keep moving up, now the nuclear testing he is talking about, we don't know about Pakistan. If Pakistan has tested something, I'm sure we would have known, we would have come to know. But Chinese also have not been testing since 1996. 1996 was the last time that the Chinese tested any nuclear weapon. Thereafter, they have not tested it. But computer simulations have been going on all over, in all these countries. So that is something that we need to keep in mind. Of course, the North Koreans have been on the way to the Incheon reactor that you talk about. That seems to be working towards creating nuclear capabilities. So all this put together, this act by President Trump may actually trigger some kind of a nuclear competition that will come up between various countries. That is the precise reason why START talks were started earlier, basically to restrict the number of nuclear warheads that countries do have. But I think now that system is now collapsing.
That system is collapsing. How should India respond? I'll come to that. But just coming out to Sushant Sareen very quickly. Sushant Sareen, I just want to ask you, if Pakistan was testing, even if it were computer simulations and so forth, would the Indian intelligence establishment know about it? Or do you think it's so well masked and disguised and so forth that it becomes difficult to read what's going on in Pakistan?
Rahul, if the Indian intelligence knew about it, they're not telling me. And I am not privy to what the Indian intelligence knows or doesn't know. But I'm sure I'm sure the Pakistanis are doing some simulations. I'm sure they're doing some testing, just as we would be doing. And if we are not doing, then we are really stupid. And I don't think we are that stupid. I really think we would be doing it. So the question is, do we have the kind of data we need? because again, nuclear warheads also need to be developed. Yes, to some extent, the new warheads that have been developed, that kind of slowed down, especially in the West. But there are more modern warheads that have been developed. So I think if an opportunity opens up because Trump decides to do open testing, then certainly I think that's an opportunity we should not give up. That is one. Second, Rahul, I am of the view that, our entire nuclear doctrine is not handed to us by Lord God Himself that it cannot be changed. It is not written in stone. And I think every single word of that doctrine needs to be examined whether it still holds or not. You say credible minimum deterrence. What is minimum? What is your definition of minimum? If you have two nuclear weapon states coalescing together or acting in concert, and I'm talking about China and Pakistan, what is the minimum that you define at that point of time?
Yes.
I think that needs to be questioned, and whether that minimum stays at a fixed number or does it have to increase commensurately. What is credible? Is your deterrence credible? Is it not credible? Because that depends on a number of other factors. Then, do you even have a deterrence? In the sense that the Pakistanis have not exactly been deterred when they were sponsoring terrorism or even when they were doing something like a Kargil. So, were we able to deter them at that point of time? Has our responsibility been seen as us being, not aggressive enough, or has it compromised our deterrence? And then finally, on this no first use, Rahul, I think it's extremely important to understand that, there is a certain assumption behind no first use. But if imagine a situation, this is a hypothetical situation, you're faced with a two-front conventional war
Yes.
and two fronts where you have formidable enemies. At what point of time do you decide that you need to either resort to nuclear saber rattling or actually start using nukes to defend yourself, to protect yourself?
Yeah.
At what point of time? Do we have a clarity at what point of time do we need to start doing it? Even if it's on a single front, whether Eastern or Western. So these are serious things, and
Serious.
simply because we have decided that we have a very strong army, we have, good navy and air force, that,
Okay. So no, hang on. Let's break this down. I'll bring in Ayyar Mitra, also bring in General Dhillon. General Dhillon, let's take the first of the questions that has been posed by Sushant Sareen. Is our nuclear program credible? There has been conversation around whether we achieved the amount of yield that we were supposed to have, that was officially claimed in Pokhran 2. So I'm asking you, is that debate settled or is it still open?
Good evening, Rahul, and good evening to the fellow panelists and your viewers. First of all, as Mr. Sujantrin brought out this point of credible nuclear deterrence and first use, and Jan Narasimhan very clearly said that computer simulations or the lab simulations are adequate in today's world to upgrade your systems, warheads and other things. More important today is the delivery system. The delivery system which are non-detectable, which are non-interceptable, and which are sure to reach the intended point of targeting. So our nuclear deterrence or the nuclear warheads or nuclear arsenal, the credibility, even if it is not 100%, 80%, 60%, still it's a nuclear weapon. It's not like any other weapon that, okay, if it is not 100% effective, it will cause this much damage. The damage caused by nuclear weapon is tremendous, and we all are aware of it, the people sitting on this panel. But notwithstanding that, the lab simulations and computer simulations are always going on to upgrade our systems of all types, including nuclear. Now, coming to the point which Mr. Sareen brought out of no first use. I agree with him. There is no first use is not cast in stone.
Yes.
And there is also an explanation of no first use. As we all know, the nuclear warheads are kept at two separate places. They are brought together and then they're mated, oblique, joint, or coupled before they are launched at the place of launch site. So, as per our intelligence, when we come to know that nuclear warheads have come out of two nuclear sites and they have been brought to the launch site and they are being mated now, the intent to use nuclear weapon is considered the first use. We will not wait for the enemy to use the nuclear weapon, let it fall on our territory, kill our civilians and soldiers, and then we consider it's a first use. No, sir. Moment the enemy has shown intent of coupling the nuclear weapons, we are well within our rights to stop him from using that nuclear weapon against us. That intent is considered the first use. Second, if we are faced with a situation like Mr. Serene brought out a scenario of two-front war, and we feel that now is the time that we are going to lose either the territory or the soldiers or the equipment or any other national assets, we are well within our rights to say, okay, the no first use doesn't hold good anymore. We are going to nuke you unless you stop, the red lines will be drawn. So these are the policies or the doctrines which are best kept ambiguous. So is the credible nuclear deterrence.
Okay.
We should not, and we should never assign numbers to the credibility, because ambiguity is the best thing. We should never assign the power or the yield or the impact or the effectiveness to the credibility.
Okay, so
ambiguity is the best. Let the enemy find it out.
Okay.
Let the enemy, जैसे air chief ने बोला ना, enemy कुरेद के, let them do it. Why should we make their job easy? We should be very clear that in our lab simulation, otherwise, our weapons are credible and they are effective.
Okay, so hang on. Abhijit Iyer Mitra, look, you look closely at China. They have got systems, advanced systems like FOBs, these are delivery systems and so on and so forth. So they can actually evade missile defenses, and you know how that works. But just a little aside from that, we heard General Dillon say that, look, computer simulations and all of that keep going on and they give you a fair idea. Are these adequate and enough, first, number one? Or do we actually need to carry out physical tests like we've done in the past under a cloak of secrecy, and we managed to do it very, very well? So that's one. And number two, you know, this business of suggesting that, look, we don't need to establish verbally a deterrence by suggesting, a lot of these, America and China and all that have published, and Russia have published exactly down to the last warhead they have under the START and other agreements. So, I mean, why should we be ambiguous, and why are they so sort of forthcoming and so on and so forth?
So there's no rule about ambiguity or clarity. You know, Israel, which has a huge stockpile of weapons, even refuses to acknowledge the existence of those weapons, right?
Yeah.
China doesn't reveal the exact number of weapons, even though France and Britain do reveal the total number of weapons. They don't reveal how many are in a manufactured state, how many are in a deployed state, and if they're deployed on submarines or if they're deployed on aircraft or ground-based missiles or whatever, right? Number one. Number two, let's not take Mr. Trump very seriously. I think he's using this as a way of weakening international guidelines because he wants to do what he wants to do. Now, I'm going to show you a graphic out here. This is an earthquake versus the upper thing in red is the actual nuclear test. The bottom is a earthquake. Now, you see the thing about nuclear testing. Because it happens at a certain point, it is very easy to detect seismically by seismographs, as opposed to tectonic shifts, earthquakes, that is to say, which happens across an entire plate. You see, so it's spread out. And you can see that from this graphic here. You can see the single point origin of a nuclear explosion above, and the multi-point origin of, sorry, this is going into the rest of my this thing. But that is how these explosions are detected. Now, it doesn't matter. People in the Twitter are saying, oh, we could hear we saw these low intensity blasts in seismic shifts in Balochistan. No. Any kind of an explosion, even a non-nuclear explosion of the primary stage, the trigger, if it's a gun type assembly, if it's a implosion assembly, you test the non-nuclear part of it. If it is powerful enough, you can detect it as a man-made explosion. So I'm not taking what Mr. Trump is saying very seriously, because even the last North Korean test was in September 2017. He is creating afwa. I don't know what the exact English, because Hindi afwa is such a lovely word. I don't know how it translates exactly into English. But he is creating afwa because he is obsessed with it is better, best, biggest. I have the biggest this, I have the most beautiful ballroom, etc., etc. Now, you see, when somebody dies in a car accident, they don't care if they were plowed down by a Mercedes or a Maruti 800. A nuclear weapon is a nuclear weapon. There is no such thing as the best nuclear weapon. Right. It doesn't matter if it's a 1945 era nuclear weapon. It is still, if it is still capable of killing the whole population of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, you have still got a very good weapon. You don't need to make a better nuclear weapon. I have complete confidence in our nuclear weapons. There is no need for us.
You haven't still weighed in on this business of these competing claims about the Pokhran 2 test. So we had a situation where certain people came out and said the yield was much too low than what was officially flagged.
Look, this is, this is again pseudoscience. Remember, our weapons were tested in extremely soft soil, which is what the area around Pokhran is. Now, if, we all, when bursting crackers was allowed, Rahul, when we were kids, the best bombs used to be the Lakshmi bombs and the atom bombs.
Yeah.
If you ever buried it in loose soil and set it off, it used to dampen the entire thing. Whereas if you put it, there used to be those big concrete cylinders for pipes and water. If you put it inside that, it would actually amplify it. Now, remember, the Pakistanis tested their weapons in very hard granite rock, which amplified their effect. And we tested it in extremely soft soil, which dampened their effect. Right? Now, if our scientists say they are happy with the results, and clearly our military and our prime ministers are happy with the results, well and good. If they aren't, if Trump creates the opening for further testing, I'm sure we'll take it up. On nuclear issues, I don't think any prime minister of India ever has in any form or way weakened the actual deterrent. They might have made these statements to, lull the enemy into a sense of complacency. Like, for example, Manmohan Singh said, what is the use of nuclear weapons, etc., etc. And this he said while he himself gave the orders for more nuclear weapons to be produced. If you remember Rajiv Gandhi, this Rajiv Gandhi action plan, why did he come up with this so-called Fabian thing of Rajiv Gandhi action plan where the whole world would give up nuclear weapons? Because he wanted to give the orders to start weaponizing. So he had to take an absolute maximalist position so that he could actually start manufacturing the bombs. So no prime minister of India has ever been, idealistic and goofy on.
So let me bring in General Narasimhan on that point, sir. You've been an insider. You probably know what and where things stand. Is the deterrence well established? And again, the question that Sushant Sareen asked, what is minimum? Why do we say minimum?
The reason why we say minimum is, I just want to take a lesson from what Mao Zedong said when he started the China's nuclear program. He said, I need only 6 nuclear weapons. That was his minimum deterrent that he talked about. Okay. So, like Abhijit mentioned, in the credible minimum deterrence part of it, the numbers play only a smaller role. What we need to understand is when we say credible minimum deterrence, the numbers we have is what we have. But what we should be capable of is protecting our systems from any kind of attack on them and be able to respond. That is where the deterrence comes in. So this is something I think we need to keep in mind. On the nuclear doctrine issue, please understand the ambiguity is the one which is our strength. We have kept it minimal. Like, for example, we said no first use. I am slightly at variance with what General Dillon mentioned, because if you are actually going to launch on, in case you find an intention and you launch on it, you actually move from no first use to launch on warning. So that is a difference that we need to actually differentiate. Notwithstanding that.
No, can you explain yourself? I didn't get that. Launch on warning. I didn't understand that. Could you please break that down?
I will break it further. See, China today, when we are actually trying to get the reconnaissance systems, etc., they kept in place, what we expect or what analysts are saying, that from no first use, China is moving towards launch on warning. Launch on warning is actually what General Dillon mentioned. Like, for example, if you see that the enemy or adversary is planning and preparing to launch a nuclear device, then you launch without waiting for it. That is launch on warning. That's a little different from no first use. So that is what we feel that most of the analysts here, they feel that China is moving from no first use to launch on warning. That is the difference. The other thing is,
So should we
are talking
also,
about,
do we need to now explicitly come out and say we are junking that old no first use NFU?
no first use has got a lot of advantages. China also follows a no first use policy. They have not said officially
Yeah,
they are moving away from it. Okay. No first use gives you certain amount of stability within the international system. That I think we need to actually keep going with it.
Okay.
We can always, by the way, let me also tell you, Abhijit, just give me a second. Let me also tell you that this nuclear doctrine, though it is not in the open domain, that the revisions, I think I'm sure within the establishment, they keep looking at it periodically. So let us not think that,
I'm only saying because when Manohar Parrikar had broached the subject, yeah, go ahead, Mr. Mitra,
Sorry,
go ahead,
just
I'll bring in General. Yeah.
I just want to add to what General Narasimhan said and synthesize what General Dhillon said. You see, when because you wanted to know about this minimal. You see, minimal is jargon. It does not mean minimum. Our doctrine is credible minimum deterrence. The credible actually marks the lower end of numbers we require, because to then paraphrase General Saab's quote about Mao Zedong, what is enough to deter China and Pakistan? Is 15 warheads enough? Is 10 enough? Is 5 enough? Minimum connotes the minimum you require when deterrence fails. If those 6 warheads are not enough, how many do you actually need to use? So minimum, very curiously, is also the maximum. So credible is
Because
the
it's relative.
Minimum is the upper limit, and deterrence is the intended outcome.
Okay. General Dhillon, yes, yeah, I'll come out to you, Sushant Sareen. We have 3 minutes. General Dhillon, I have to ask you this because you sort of did talk about it. Fundamentally, do you believe that as things stand, we have enough to deter our enemies on 2 fronts, that is China and Pakistan? We saw in Operation Sindoor that this was, as Sushant Sareen pointed out, there was a lot at ops level, there was a lot of coordination between the two.
Rahul, yes. As per I've been in offices where certain more information is available. So as per the open sources information, we have enough to deter both the fronts. And then, like I said earlier, the no first use is not cast in stone. At any one time, we can say, okay, here onwards, now that we are in a position where we need to do this, or we will face unacceptable casualties or damages or whatever. So that is very important. And like this minimum, like Mr. Mitra was saying, the minimum, how many times you want to destroy the world over? In case of a nuclear war between 2 nations, we are the only place where 3 nuclear nations are coexisting next to each other.
That's right.
And they're not very friendly to us, 2 of them. So how many times you want to destroy the world over? It's adequate. Like Second World War was brought to a halt by 2 nuclear weapons. So minimum is just a phrase.
Okay.
Let's not put numbers to it. And I think more important is let's add delivery systems to it who can.
So are you telling me that we don't need to go back to physical testing? Is that like everyone is agreed on that point? Sushant Sareen, should we just... No, you're not. Okay, so give us your view.
Okay, 3 very quick points. One is a kind of a question to General Narasimhan because he is the China expert. As far as I remember, the Chinese no first use is only against non-nuclear weapon states. It does not apply to nuclear weapon state. So India is a nuclear weapon state, so then NFU has no meaning for us. Number 1. Number 2, the Pakistanis have they have a first use policy. So we have to take that into account if we are faced with 2 adversaries, especially if they're working together. Secondly, the whole idea of the minimum is also about survivability of your arsenal. If the other side is launching first and they have some kind of a fix on where your nukes are, which is why you go in for a triad, then there are certain numbers, which of course there are people who will figure that out. And finally, look, I agree that it's all about delivery systems, but if you have to marry a warhead to a delivery system, there has to be adequate amount of data. Did the 5 tests that we carried out in 1998 give us adequate data to whatever new warheads that we'll have to, for example, produce, which we can marry to new delivery systems? I think these are things that we
Okay, let's quickly run
need to work out.
run these 3 questions past General Narasimhan. Yes, you heard the questions.
One is of course, the kind of why China's NFU is only against nuclear weapon states. Whether they consider India as a nuclear weapon state is something that you need to understand. They only agree to countries which have actually been nuclear weapon states before the NPT came into existence as nuclear weapon states. In their documents, etc., they still do not, though of course they know that we have the nuclear capability, they don't consider us a nuclear weapon state. So that is something that you need to understand. Second is,
Wow, then we should definitely carry out a couple of tests to prove that we can.
no, that is one issue. The second issue is there are questions in their no first use also saying that whether what they consider as their territory, will they consider it as their territory, or whether they use it, they'll not use it. These are questions which have been in the domain for a very long time. A lot of people have been actually talking about it. And so that is something that we need to understand. The second question is about the mating of this of the warhead with the delivery systems. So delivery systems, when they are being made and when they are being tried out and tested, these things are actually kept in mind as to how to do these things. And so that is nothing very, it's a rocket science, of course. We keep saying it is not a rocket science. It is a rocket science.
Okay.
And that rocket science is generally taken care of. And so I think we are in a very good place. If we test actually, you will have enough pushback against it, and that is going to affect us also badly. Please take your mind back to 1998. What happened to us? So should we really do it? I'm sure we will leave it for the government to decide, because they are the best people to understand this and do it.
If Trump does it, then does that change things very quickly, sir?
It doesn't change anything for us.
Okay.
Trump can keep doing anything. Russians can keep doing anything. I think we should do what we need to do and what we decide to do.
Okay.
That is the way
Well,
we need to look at it.
that's one view, viewers. I'm sure this debate is going to...
Sorry,
very
just
quickly.
I want to point out Prime Minister Vajpayee's statement, which kind of echoes what General Dhillon said. He said, we're not going to wait. Once we know their missiles are up in the air, we are not going to wait for them to hit us and then hit them back. So he made that very clear. And then there is the very famous 21st October speech 2010
No, that's true.
of National Security Advisor Shiv Shankar Menon, where he said, no first use, only against non-nuclear weapon states.
That I remember that. That was said. Again, that created a huge debate. And again, there were people who got up and said we should in fact denuclearize. Anyhow, viewers, this is an interesting conversation. And I'm sure if you speak to 4 other people, they'll have 4 other views on it. But we've given you a sort of panoply of views here.